What if I told you that many of the colorful foods your children eat every day contain petroleum-based chemicals that are banned or restricted in other countries? That the bright red maraschino cherry on their sundae, the neon blue sports drink in their lunchbox, and the rainbow-colored cereal that they had for breakfast all contain substances linked to behavioral problems, attention disorders, and even cancer? Welcome to the hidden world of food dyes in America, a multi-billion-dollar industry that has quietly colored our food supply for generations, while serious questions about safety have been repeatedly pushed aside. For decades, the food industry has assured us these synthetic colors are harmless. But recent scientific evidence and policy changes suggest a different story. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of America's most widespread but least understood food additives. What you'll discover may change the way you look at food forever. The colorful history. The story of food dyes in America began in the late 19th century, when industrialization transformed our food system. As mass-produced foods became common, manufacturers discovered that adding vibrant colors could make products more appealing and mask inconsistencies in quality. In 1856, William Henry Perkin discovered the first synthetic organic dye called mauve. This breakthrough led to a wave of synthetic colors derived from coal tar, a byproduct of coal processing. Food manufacturers quickly adopted these new dyes, using them to enhance the visual appeal of everything from butter to candies. But there was a dark side to this colorful revolution. With no regulation, manufacturers often used toxic metals like copper, mercury, and even arsenic to color foods. Some early synthetic dyes contained dangerous chemicals that caused serious health problems. The turning point came in 1906 when muckraking journalist Upton Sinclair published The Jungle, exposing the horrific conditions in America's meatpacking industry. Public outrage led to the passage of the Pure Food and Drug Act, giving the government its first real authority to regulate food additives, including dyes. By 1931, 15 coal tar dyes had been approved for use in food. 7 of those synthetic dyes are still in wide use today: FD&C Blue No. 1, Blue No. 2, Green No. 3, Red No. 3, Red No. 40, Yellow No. 5, and Yellow No. 6. Today, these petroleum-based synthetic dyes are found in thousands of foods Americans consume daily. The average American child now consumes 5 times more food dye than in 1950, with some children ingesting more than 100 milligrams per day. The science and health concerns. For decades, these 7 FDA-approved synthetic food dyes were considered safe for human consumption. But beginning in the 1970s, troubling questions began to emerge. In 1973, Dr. Benjamin Feingold, a California allergist, proposed that artificial colors could trigger hyperactivity in children. His controversial Feingold diet eliminated artificial colors and preservatives, and many parents reported dramatic improvement in their children's behavior. The food industry quickly dismissed his findings as anecdotal. But over the following decades, scientific evidence began mounting. A landmark study published in The Lancet in 2007 found that mixtures of artificial colors, along with the preservative sodium benzoate, increased hyperactivity in typical children, not just those diagnosed with ADHD. The study was so compelling that the European Union now requires foods containing certain dyes to carry a warning label stating that they may have an adverse effect on activity and attention in children. Many European food manufacturers reformulated their products to avoid the warning. But in America, the FDA reviewed the same evidence and reached a different conclusion. In 2011, an FDA advisory committee determined there wasn't enough evidence to establish a causal relationship between dyes and hyperactivity in the general population, though they acknowledged that some children with ADHD might be sensitive to them. A 2021 California Environmental Protection Agency review found that children are not only likely exceeding safe levels of food coloring additives, but also found an association between food dye consumption and increased behavioral problems, including ADHD symptoms. Beyond behavioral concerns, some dyes have been linked to more serious health problems. Red No. 3, for example, was banned in cosmetics and externally applied drugs in 1990 after studies linked it to thyroid tumors in laboratory animals. Yet remarkably, it remained approved for use in food and oral medications for decades. Dr. Joel Nigg, professor of psychiatry at Oregon Health and Science University, explains that we still don't fully understand the mechanisms by which synthetic dyes might affect the brain. But studies suggest they could increase oxidative stress, trigger neuroinflammation, or interact with brain chemicals to regulate behavior. What's particularly concerning is that the safety testing for food dyes typically examines acute toxicity or cancer risk, but rarely looks at subtler effects on brain development or behavior that might manifest over time. Some researchers believe that synthetic food dyes may be contributing to the rising rates of neurodevelopmental conditions like ADHD in American children. While food dyes alone are unlikely to cause these conditions, they may be one factor in a complex mix of environmental exposures that affect developing brains. The double standard. Perhaps the most shocking aspect of America's food dye story is the glaring double standard between what Americans eat and what consumers in other countries are served. Many popular American food brands sell reformulated versions of their products in Europe that use natural colors instead of synthetic dyes. Kraft macaroni and cheese, Skittles, Mountain Dew, and many cereals contain artificial dyes in their American versions, while their European counterparts use natural alternatives like beet juice, turmeric, and paprika extract. In 2015, after years of consumer research, Kraft announced it would remove the artificial dyes from its iconic mac and cheese in the United States, switching to natural colors like paprika, annatto, and turmeric, the same ingredients they'd been using in their European version for years. Industry insiders admit that reformulating with natural colors is entirely possible, but typically costs more. Food companies have calculated that most American consumers won't pay the slight premium for natural colors, while European consumers and regulators demand them. The difference stems from fundamentally different approaches to food safety. The European Union follows what's called the precautionary principle, which means if there's scientific uncertainty about a food additive's safety, they err on the side of caution. The US system generally requires definitive proof of harm before restricting an additive that's already in the food supply. This has led to a situation where dozens of food additives that are banned or heavily restricted in Europe remain in wide use in American foods. Food dyes are just one example of this regulatory divide. The industry response. So, how has the food industry responded to these concerns? Largely by doubling down on synthetic dyes while simultaneously developing natural alternatives for the growing clean label market segment. Internal industry documents reveal that food companies have long known about concerns surrounding synthetic dyes, yet they've continued to use them because they're cheaper, more stable, and produce more vibrant colors than natural alternatives. The food industry maintains that all FDA-approved colors are safe for consumption at current levels. They point to decades of use without widespread acute health problems and emphasize that the scientific evidence linking dyes to behavioral issues remains inconclusive. It's a lucrative business. The global food colorants market was valued at over $4.3 billion in 2022 and is projected to reach $7.8 billion by 2031. Synthetic dyes make up a significant portion of this market, although natural colorants are growing faster as consumer preferences shift. Meanwhile, the same companies producing artificially colored foods are also developing natural product lines to capture health-conscious consumers. This dual strategy allows them to maintain profits while hedging against potential regulatory changes. The food industry has also invested heavily in lobbying efforts to influence regulatory decisions. Between 2014 and 2022, food and beverage companies spent over $150 million on lobbying federal officials, with food additive regulation being one key focus area. The turning point. After decades of inaction, the regulatory landscape in America is finally beginning to shift. In October 2024, the FDA announced it would ban red number 3 from food products, citing research linking it to cancer in laboratory animals. Manufacturers have until January 2027 to reformulate products containing this dye. The dramatic change came in April 2025 when the Department of Health and Human Services and FDA announced plans to phase out all petroleum-based synthetic dyes from the nation's food supply by the end of 2026. A move described as a significant milestone in the administration's Make America Healthy Again initiative. At a press conference announcing the phase-out, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. stated, "For too long, some food producers have been feeding Americans petroleum-based chemicals without their knowledge or consent. These poisonous compounds offer no nutritional benefit and pose real, measurable dangers to our children's health and development." States had already begun taking matters into their own hands. In 2023, California passed legislation banning certain food dyes in schools, with other states including Arizona, West Virginia, and New York introducing similar bills. This regulatory shift is forcing a massive reformulation effort across the food industry. Major food companies including PepsiCo, General Mills, Mars, and Kellogg now face the challenge of replacing synthetic dyes with natural alternatives while maintaining the vibrant colors consumers expect. The FDA is fast-tracking the review of natural alternatives such as calcium phosphate, Galdiera extract blue, gardenia blue, and butterfly pea flower extract. The agency is also providing regulatory flexibilities to help the industry transition away from synthetic dyes. The consumer revolution. Even before the regulatory changes, a consumer revolution was already underway. Armed with smartphones and social media, parents and health advocates have been pressuring food companies to remove artificial dyes from products marketed to children. Organizations like the Center for Science and the Public Interest have led campaigns to ban synthetic dyes or at least require warning labels similar to those in Europe. Online petitions have gathered hundreds of thousands of signatures, while social media hashtags like #DieFreeKids have helped spread awareness. Schools across America have been quietly reformulating their menus to remove artificial colors, often in response to parent advocacy. Some school districts reported improvements in student behavior after eliminating artificially colored foods, though these observations haven't been scientifically verified. Meanwhile, a growing ecosystem of naturally colored alternatives has emerged. From Whole Foods to Target's Simply Balanced line, consumers now have more options than ever to avoid synthetic dyes if they choose. Many families have taken matters into their own hands, creating homemade versions of favorite treats using natural colorings like beet juice, turmeric, spirulina, and fruit and vegetable concentrates. Social media sites like Pinterest are filled with recipes for naturally colored versions of popular foods. The future of food color. So what does the future hold for food coloring in America? With synthetic dyes being phased out, a revolution in natural food coloring technology is underway. Food scientists are developing sophisticated new methods to extract colors from fruits, vegetables, and even algae. Companies like Christian Hansen and DDW are investing millions in research to create natural colorants that can match the vibrancy and stability of synthetic dyes. Other researchers are using computer modeling to identify novel plant compounds that could provide stable, vibrant colors without the drawbacks of synthetic dyes. Some are even exploring fermentation technologies to produce colorants that technically qualify as natural but can be manufactured at scale. Consumers may need to adjust their expectations. Natural colors often produce more subtle, less uniform appearances than their synthetic counterparts. The perfectly consistent bright red of a strawberry yogurt or the electric blue of a sports drink may become things of the past. But many nutritionists argue this visual recalibration is worth it. As Dr. Marian Nestle, Professor Emerita of Nutrition and Food Studies at New York University points out, food dyes add no nutritional value. They're simply there to make often unhealthy products more appealing, especially to children. The American shift away from synthetic dyes could influence global standards. With the European Union already restricting certain dyes and now the United States moving to eliminate them entirely, other countries may follow suit, potentially creating a more unified global approach to food coloring regulation. Conclusion. The story of food dyes in America is ultimately about much more than color. It's about how we balance innovation with safety, how we protect vulnerable populations like children, and how we decide what evidence is sufficient to take precautionary action. As this transformation unfolds, consumers have the power to accelerate change through their purchasing decisions. By demanding transparency and choosing naturally colored options when available, consumers are already driving reformulation across the food industry. Perhaps the most important lesson from America's food dye story is that vibrant, appealing food doesn't require synthetic chemicals. Nature has provided an incredible palette of colors, from the deep red of beets to the golden yellow of turmeric, the bright orange of carrots to the rich purple of berries. The future of food color in America may be returning to its roots, finding beauty and appeal in the natural colors that have made food enticing since long before synthetic dyes existed. And our children's health may be better for it.